think my gift, honestly, is being able to take wildly complex information and distill it down into sticky, stupid sounding things that somebody could explain at a kitchen table, but encapsulated in these sticky, simple tools that I'm teaching to the world is profound science backed up by decades of research by the world's smartest people. And I just happen to have a knack for saying, oh, well, here's how you take 10 years of research around habits and you turn it into one tool you can use in 5 seconds. And so I also think that for better or for worse, I have had a ton of life experience, just like everybody else that I'm willing to talk about. Whether that is having a mom and dad that were super, super young when they had me. And so there was a lot of stress for them. And how that kind of impacts you as a kid, absorbing your mom's stress and wanting to make sure she's okay. And then becoming a kid that's constantly like trying to make sure everybody's okay, to being molested in the 4th grade. And in the span of sexual abuse, my experience, honestly, is kind of tame compared to the horror show that a lot of people go through. It was a one-time situation with a kid I never saw again. It was confusing, not terrifying. I disassociated when I woke up with this kid on top of me, and the rest is like, that was it. But my nervous system was impacted for the rest of my life until recently because of it. Whether it was the anxiety that I experienced for almost my entire adult life, whether it was the postpartum depression that I experienced with our first child, whether it's the experience of jumping from job to job to job to job, trying to figure out something that would make me happy, or having the experience that led to the 5-second rule, which is having my husband go for something that he deeply wanted to do, which was to launch his own business with his best friend. And in the beginning, it was really amazing. And then it was horrible. And they worked extremely hard, but due to a ton of things that happened in the business, and entrepreneurial ventures are very, very risky, but that doesn't take away the deeply personal impact it has on you when it fails, is that we found ourselves nearly $1 million in debt. And never on my vision board did I paste a photo of a woman who is pinned to her bed from anxiety and drunk and about to go through bankruptcy and on the verge of losing everything. I think when you find yourself in a moment in your life where everything veers suddenly off course and you go, how the fuck did I get here? Like, this was not what I manifested. This was not on the vision board. I've worked hard. Like, I think I'm a good person. How did I screw up so bad? How did this happen to me? And so I've been there. I know what it's like to have a string of bounced checks and not be able to pay for groceries. I know what it's like to pull your kid out of town soccer because you can't pay for it. I know what it's like to be consumed with jealousy because everybody else seems to have it all together and you are literally sucking wind and licking your wounds in the corner, pretending everything's okay. I have lived it. And so my experience comes from my life and the tools that I have stumbled into, sometimes by dumb luck, sometimes by divine intervention, I'm so passionate about them because they are the things that got me out of the worst moments of my life. They are the tools that helped me get control when life was spiraling out of control. And it's interesting, that you kind of linked up the 5-second rule and the high five habit because there's almost a 5-year span between those two books. So I write the 5-second rule and, that's a whole nother story, but I write the 5-second rule. I self-published the book. One of the chapters in the high five habit tells the story, chapter 12, of how that book launch was a colossal failure and then led to something remarkable happening, which always happens in your life. And for the last 3.5 years, I have been trying to write a new book. And I have written and written and written and written and dictated and dictated and dictated. And I think that the reason why nothing would come that was worthy of your time is because the idea for the high five habit was not ready to be born yet. And that ideas have a life of their own. And all of the resistance, and I'm telling you this because I would bang my head against the table. I actually had a publisher cancel my book contract because it had been a year and I hadn't written anything. And that happened in April of 2020. And then they wanted the money back that I had already spent. And so I have banged my head against the wall and banged my head against the wall. And every single person around me is like, you got to write something with a 5. And I'm like, I'm not writing something with a 5. Like, that's not what this is. And so, the high five habit, I think of everything that I've ever put out into the world. This is the most important and the most profound. And I need to tell you the story of how this came to be. Because I was not writing a book when all this happened. What happened, and this is not a pandemic story, but this all happened in 2020.
Yeah.
And, basically you don't even really need to know the backdrop, but, something interesting happened. We all have a story. We know the moment when pandemic turned your life upside down. When was that moment for you, Julie?
Oh my gosh, there were a lot of moments. I think for me, honestly, it was, I have a stepdaughter and 2 children. I went downstairs and I love my stepdaughter. She has autism. She was, listening to a video very loud. My kids were fighting. They were supposed to be in school. My husband is like at the kitchen table. And I'm someone who used to working at our home alone. And I was like, I can't do this. I freaking can't do this every day in and day out, all of us there. And it felt a little trapped. And I knew I felt grateful and all of that. But honestly, I felt like this is a fucking nightmare right now. Like, this is overwhelming. I'm an empath. I'm taking everybody's stuff on and no one's meaning to be difficult, but it was challenging. We did a lot of days, all of us.
Yeah. For me, what happened is it was Wednesday in March of 2020. Yeah. And I was at my dream job. I had always dreamt as a little girl, I would come home from school in Western Michigan and we could get WGN in Chicago on our television station in Western Michigan. And my mom would have Oprah and Donahue on. And I always thought it was the coolest thing in the world to have a job where you got to talk to real people about their lives. And so at the age of 50, I got the opportunity for the first time in my life to actually host a daytime talk show on TV. And it was a dream come true. And we were 167 episodes into taping season 1. And on a Wednesday in March, somebody walked in and said, we found COVID in the building and we need you to evacuate. Within 5 minutes, they evacuated the CBS broadcast center. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to the 130 people I'd worked with for a year. And I was fired. And as I'm driving home to Boston from New York, where we were taping, and I saw the skyline disappearing in the rearview mirror, I started thinking, are you kidding me? I have literally worked so hard for the last 10 years. I have to reinvent myself again? And then the phone rings and it's our daughter who's studying abroad in Spain going, are they closing the borders? How am I going to get home? And then the phone rang and it was our other daughter in LA. Mom, why are we, USC's shutting down? What the and then they come home and it was just this implosion of grief. And then the book contract gets canceled and they want the money back. And then every speech starts to cancel. And then I start having these flashbacks to over a decade ago when Chris and I were $1 million in debt and I was losing everything. And for the first 3 weeks, dude, I was in my pajamas all day. I was drinking Bloody Marys by 11. We were doing nothing but watching Glee and Harry Potter and the wheels were off. And one morning I wake up and everybody can relate to this. I woke up and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. Yeah. I felt overwhelmed. I felt beaten up. I felt emotionally exhausted. And so I use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to drag myself out of bed because I know that the worst place for me is to lie in bed. And it's important to say this because, I invented the 5-second rule 13 years ago to get out of bed at a time in my life when I was hitting rock bottom. And 13 years later, I still use it to get out of bed because despite what the experts say about how something becomes a habit after 21 days, it's baloney. If you don't like doing something, you may never like doing it. It may never be a habit. So, I think it's important to say that. And so I drag myself out of bed on this morning and I make my bed and then I walk into the bathroom and I'm standing there and I'm brushing my teeth. And all of a sudden I catch my reflection in the mirror. And I think, oh my God, you look like hell. And the woman I saw in the mirror looked exhausted and beaten down. And then I started picking apart her reflection, her gray hair, the dark circles under her eyes, the saggy neck, one boob's hanging lower than the other. And then, of course, once your thoughts go to criticism, you're just going to go down the drain. And so next thing you know, I'm thinking about the day. Why did I get up so late? And then how am I going to pull myself together in 8 minutes for this Zoom call? And I forgot to respond to that person's thing. And then the dog's at my feet and he still needs to be walked. And I just felt so overwhelmed by my life. And, what's interesting, Julie, is if you walked into the bathroom in that moment, I would have spun on a dime. I would have been able to be like, Julie, you're right. This blows, man. This is not fair. You do not deserve this. But let me tell you something, Julie. If anybody can handle it, it's you. You got this. Come on, girl. And I would literally send you out of that bathroom ready to attack life.
Yeah.
I could not lift myself up. And in fact, I think even if I had tried, I wouldn't have believed it because I didn't feel it. And I don't know what came over me. But for whatever reason, standing there in my underwear, I mean, I didn't even have a bra on, for crying out loud. I literally raise my hand and high five the woman I see in the mirror because she needed it. And it's not like lightning striked and the heavens open and that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? No. All that happened is I laughed. I laughed because it was so cheesy. And then my shoulders dropped. And then my chin lifted. And I felt something shift in me. I felt this little sense of resilience. And I didn't even give myself a pep talk. I kind of felt like this thing like, okay, suck it up, get out there. Like kind of like, me. So it was the second morning when something really clicked. This is when it really hit me. Because again, I woke up. This is April of 2020. Same overwhelm, same problems, same everything. I'm feeling the same defeated mentality. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I get out of bed. I make the bed. I start walking toward the bathroom. And this is the moment that changed everything. Because I felt something I had never felt before. You know how when you're about to go see a friend in a cafe, somebody you really like, what do you feel right when you're about to walk in?
Yeah, usually I'm like picturing actually my oldest best friend in Boston. I'm like, Meg, I feel like excited. My just lit up inside. Like want to give her a hug.
Yeah.
Get some good coffee. Yeah. Like anticipation, excited. Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt.
Wow.
About seeing the human being, Mel Robbins. I will be 53 this year.
Wow.
I have never in my life looked forward to seeing me, the human being. I've looked forward to seeing an outfit I'm wearing. I've looked forward to seeing what my eyeshadow might look like. I have never had an experience until that moment of looking forward to seeing and being with myself. Now, as I was standing in the bathroom that second morning and I started brushing my teeth, I had this kind of profound realization that there were two of us in there that morning. There was me and there was this woman in the mirror, and she needed me. And I've been ignoring her and beating her down and criticizing her. And that this moment in the mirror is a humongous opportunity to reconnect with her. And so as I put my toothbrush down and, I tell everybody, first of all, you got to do this 5 days in a row. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. But you should also do it right after you brush your teeth. Because, what you know and what you talk about here and what the research shows is that when you stack a new habit with something you already do, it's easier for your brain to memorize it. It stacks it together. So after you clean your teeth, because you want to get that crap out of there and you don't want to start your day with dragon breath, you got to clean out your mind. You got to clean out your attitude. You got to clean out your spirit. And so put the toothbrush down and then take a minute and be with yourself. New research from Harvard shows that if you take less than a minute in the morning as a leader and you think about, how you're going to show up today and how you're going to make an impact with people, it changes your focus and your productivity, and it changes how you show up, which changes how you impact the people that you work with. I want you to take that same research and apply it to yourself. I want you to take this moment and look yourself in the mirror, and I want you to ask yourself, what does the person in the mirror need from me today? How am I going to show up for her today? You see, most of us take this moment on autopilot and we drift and we think ahead to all the things we're going to do for everybody else. You put yourself first the same way you put everybody else there, by putting what you need first thing in the morning. And you might not even know. That's why you got to stand with yourself and look at yourself and be like, what do I need today? And some days it's just, I just need to be kind and patient with myself. Some days it's like, I could actually use some fun today. Some days it's like, I need to finally have that boundary, and I'm going to do it today. I'm going to have that conversation today. That's what they need from me. And so then once you do that, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to raise your hand and you're going to seal it with a high five to your reflection. So the high five habit, I can see why you and I enjoy and admire each other's work so much, because both the 5-second rule and the high five habit, number one, do help you clean up the mess. And ironically, I discovered both of them, not because I was researching anything, but because I had dug a hole or I'd fallen into one in my life and I needed to manufacture a ladder out of thin air in order to climb out of the hole that I was in. So my brand and version of personal development, whether it's good or bad, it typically involves me hitting a wall or falling into a hole and having to figure a mess out, clean up the mess. And it's in the cleaning up of the mess or the living through the mess or the standing in the mess that I discover small, simple things that help me move through it, clean it up, learn from it. And so the high five habit is this very simple thing that on its face seems absurdly stupid. And it is just this. I want you to start every morning by adding a high five in the mirror to your morning routine. And what happens when you start to add a high five in the mirror to yourself as part of your morning routine is it absolutely breaks apart decades of subconscious programming in your mind, body, and spirit. It helps your brain in particular create new programming that impacts how you see yourself, how you see what you're capable of, what you think you're worthy of. And the most exciting thing about this high five habit is that you're not actually learning anything new, because what I believe you're doing, and you'll be able to kind of help us understand this, is I believe that you're taking this neural association that you have with a high five and high-fiving other people, and you are unlocking all of that lifetime of positive programming that's already in your brain and already in your nervous system, and you are aiming it back at yourself. And what that does is it changes the way you see yourself. It changes the way you treat yourself. It changes the way you feel about yourself. It changes your mood. It is just extraordinary. And I believe, the book's only been out for 3 weeks. And I believe that we are just scratching at the surface of what this can actually do for people. And what we've already learned is extraordinary.
I totally agree with everything that you say. And I'm thrilled that you are helping to open a new way of us looking at ourselves, because a couple of things that you say in the book that, I just keep going through and saying, wow, this lady really knows what she's talking about. You've really seen the inside from the other side. And it's very often, Mel, you've probably heard this. It's very often when you're just outside of a paradigm that you shift a paradigm. And, that's, you say you're not a PhD and you're not a this and that, but you're looking in on humanity and on life. And the so-called experts on humanity and life are so immersed and stuck in the stuff, you don't always see the stuff. And I've also come at my field from a similar angle. I'm a clinical neuroscientist and communication pathologist. And I've had all the training in psychology, but I've had it from a medical perspective and a science perspective. So it's kind of another angle looking in. And I kind of almost feel this, I feel an affinity because you look at things differently. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time for people to actually catch on. And they haven't with a high five, which is amazing. But what I think is people are ready and prepared. You make a comment as well in the book about this is not positive psychology. And I thought, okay, I really like you even more. Because when you said that, I really did like you. I thought, you got this, because we can't just do what you already said. You wake up feeling awful. Okay, I'm going to say my 10 gratitude statements. Your whole non-conscious mind and subconscious, and we can talk about that in unpacking everything to understand as we go along, is not going to believe you or accept you. There's a few principles. So just the positive psychology aspect, you can't just say it and think it's going to go away. You have to do something. And there's something in that action and that celebratory action. You explain that high five concept, what it does so beautifully. So can you explain that?
Sure.
You have a beautiful way of saying what it actually does and how it's, I don't want to take your words. Let's start with that, because I think that's a really good place to start. Why does something as simple as this in the mirror do what it does for you?
I think there's a number of reasons. So I think the most exciting reason why high-fiving yourself in the mirror has such a profound and lasting change inside you is because the programming associated with the high five gesture is already in your subconscious mind, and it's already programmed into your nervous system as an act of celebration. There has not been a single moment in your entire life that you have raised your hand to high five somebody and thought, I hate you, or I hope you lose, or you're unworthy. The high five, whether you're watching a sports team and teammates do it to one another, or you're watching a teacher do it to a kid, or you're watching somebody else do it, or you're receiving it, or you're giving it, a high five has only ever meant, I see you, I believe in you, I love you, we got this. One of the other things that I love about high fives is that when somebody's going through a challenging time, so in sports, if somebody blows a big play, a pep talk doesn't pick somebody up, but there's something about the energetic transfer between two people when you raise your hand to high five somebody that says, shake it off. I get that you just struggled. I get that you just blew it. I get that you just failed, but I still believe in you and I still got you. And so particularly in moments of struggle, challenge, isolation, a high five is more than a gesture. It is an affirmation of your deepest, most fundamental emotional needs. And all of that's stored in your brain. And so when you talk about this from the standpoint of habits, and that there's a trigger and a pattern repeated and there's a reward, the trigger for a high five is literally raising your hand and starting it. The second you go to raise your hand and start the high five, it doesn't matter what's happening in your life. It doesn't matter how much you hate your reflection or where you are. Your brain recognizes that physical trigger. It grabs all of the patterns associated with it in the subconscious mind, and it starts running on repeat. You get a drip of dopamine. The reward is the drip of dopamine, which is why people always feel a boost in their mood. A lot of people laugh. Some people cry as they do it. There's the dopamine working. The other thing that people feel is they feel sort of an immediate flip in terms of like a flip of energy. It's not like you're like, but you feel like a little like kind of lift. And that's your nervous system. Your nervous system is hardwired for celebration. Instinctually, human beings, when they cross a finish line, raise their hands. Instinctually, when your favorite team scores or your favorite band walks on stage, we raise our hands. Instinctually, when we see somebody in just about any culture, we tend to raise our hands, however it is, to greet somebody. We raise our hands to hug somebody. You also raise your hands to high five somebody. So your nervous system recognizes this gesture as energizing in a positive way. And so you can be at the lowest moment, which I was when I gave myself a high five. I was just at a moment in my life. It was April 2020. There was a tremendous amount going on. I felt completely overwhelmed by the demands of my business, by the crisis my kids were going through with the backdrop of the pandemic. And we've all had that feeling where you wake up and you just feel defeated. That was me. And as I'm standing there in the bathroom, this is where I want to start to unpack this with you, because I think there's so many pieces to this simple high five habit. And by so many pieces, what I want to unpack for everybody is there are a number of things that you are currently doing that are part of your morning routine that I believe most people don't even realize they are doing. And the high five habit breaks these very destructive habits that you have that you don't even realize that you have. And it will do it in about 5 seconds flat. And so let me unpack the destructive habit. So as I'm standing there, April 2020, and I'm brushing my teeth, all of a sudden I catch my reflection in the mirror. And my first thought is, oh my God, you look like hell. And then all of a sudden I start focusing on all the things that are wrong with me, or all the things I want to fix, from the dark circles under my eyes to the saggy neck to one boob hanging lower than the other. And then, of course, once you start this habit, and I'm going to call it a habit because it runs on repeat, it is a habit of self-rejection. And as you start to reject yourself, and we do it in two ways. Based on our research with, the millions of people that follow us and now hundreds of thousands of people around the world that are practicing the high five habit, we know more than 50% of men and women cannot or will not look at themselves in the mirror. That the level of either disgust or judgment or shame or regret or unhappiness with either what you look like or where you are in life has the majority of men and women not even look at themselves in the mirror. They avoid themselves. Subconsciously, it's running on autopilot. It is a habit of self-rejection that is part of your morning routine. And if you can look at yourself, what you do on default is focus on what you don't like about yourself. Again, another version of this habit of self-rejection that begins your day. And when you begin your day by picking yourself apart or ignoring, not looking at yourself, your mind then drifts into cataloging all the things that are also wrong that you're not doing. Like that morning, as I'm like, ugh, I then start going, why'd I get up so late? I need to get up earlier. I've got a Zoom call in 8 minutes. Why didn't you respond to Carolyn? Why? Like the beatdown begins, more rejection, more criticism. And it's so casual. And so I believe, this is a huge statement, but I believe that a human being can, by using the high five habit to break that habit of self-rejection in the morning, can create a bigger habit of self-acceptance that will help you feel more secure in who you are. It will help you break the cycle of people pleasing. of seeking validation outside yourself. And it will help you learn how to bring your confidence, your self-worth, your self-awareness, and your self-acceptance back in-house. And that by simply making it a habit to stop down the self-rejection and look at yourself in the mirror for just a second and see a human being. Because this is the other thing. I don't think that's your reflection. I had this huge epiphany as I've been practicing the high five habit. And that is not your reflection. I want you to consider that you're not alone in the bathroom every morning. I want you to consider that there's a human being in the mirror, a human being who's trying very hard, a human being who needs being that feels so beaten down by the constant criticism and negativity that you're throwing at them. Let's leverage a little bit of the power of objectivity here and ask yourself, every morning when I get done brushing my teeth, I put my toothbrush down because we're going to stack this new habit with the old habit of brushing my teeth. We're going to get the gunk out of my mouth so I don't spread dragon breath all day. Now I want you to get the gunk out of your mind, body, and spirit so you don't drag that self-rejection into your day, that self-criticism that's become your default into your day. And then I stare at the woman in the mirror and I ask myself, what does she need from me today? And some days, the answer is, girl, I just need you to have some fun, for crying out loud. You're working too much. And some days it's, I need you to be a little bit more courageous and tough with the conversations that you need to have. Some days it's, I need you to be kinder to me. I need you to eat better today. And sort of this moment of intentional reflection about the game I'm going to go play in life. And then I just raise my hand and I seal the intention with the woman I see in the mirror. I create this partnership with myself. It's so beautiful. And one of the coolest things about this is, I, especially using the 5-second rule, which we can talk about a little bit later, but I've become wildly successful. And even though I have been wildly successful using the 5-second rule, changing my habits, I've become a person that can basically take action. I can push through anything. We can teach you how to do that too. But what the 5-second rule and counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, to push yourself through procrastination, fear, or anxiety, get things done. It got a lot of things done. It changed my life. It's turned me into a rock star businesswoman. It's created more success than I ever thought possible, but it did not address the actual problem. And the actual problem was a deep self-hatred and a deep sense of unworthiness that for decades, I would look in the mirror and see somebody that was not enough, that was not doing things right. I was relentlessly focused on what was wrong. And it robbed me of so much joy, contentment, motivation, inspiration, of being present. And what's happened practicing the high five habit for me personally, because I think as extraordinary as the 5-second rule has been in transforming people's lives, I think this is 1,000 times more powerful. Because what's happened is it has completely reset my brain. I don't even see my face anymore. I see my soul. I see a human being I love. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. It doesn't mean that I don't screw up. It doesn't mean I don't have bad days. But just like when you look upon a child in your life, or your dog, or your cat, somebody you love unconditionally, I would never look at my daughter and obsess about what I hate about her. I now gaze upon myself and see a human being I'm rooting for. And that has changed who I am. It changes my experience of life at such a profound level. It has healed so much in my body, my mind, and my spirit. And that is what is available to you when you start incorporating this simple act of self-acceptance, of self-compassion, of self-support, and you add it into your morning routine. every single day.
Why does the the high five habit even like work? Were you first of all doing it when you were in a bad place and you were high fiving yourself?
Yeah, so this is what happened.
Okay.
So I invented the 5-second rule, for example. Right. When my husband's restaurant business was going under, I was unemployed. We were nearly $1 million in debt and we were about to lose everything. 3 kids under the age of 10, liens on the house, no money in the bank. Just deeply terrifying moment. I couldn't get out of bed without hitting the snooze button 4 or 5 times and the kids missing the bus. I literally became a person I did not recognize, drinking myself into the ground, screaming at my husband all the time, constantly on edge, panic stricken, the whole thing. And I invented the 5-second rule out of dumb luck as a trick to help me get out of bed. The idea being if I launched myself out of bed, maybe I wouldn't be in bed when the anxiety hit. That I could move fast enough to beat the depression, the overwhelm, the fear, and the anxiety. And it worked. And that's spread around the world. It's changing millions of people's lives. It's super cool. And the high five habit was born out of a very similar experience. So the book is not a pandemic book, but I developed the high five habit, or stumbled upon it rather, on a really low morning. That's it. Like, the kids are home. College is imploded. We're in full-blown pandemic mode. My daytime talk show's canceled, so I've been fired from my dream job. I've had a book contract canceled because I haven't turned in the book on time. I start having speeches canceled, so now I'm getting triggered, feeling the financial free fall that we had experienced a decade ago. And I was just overwhelmed. My kids are in breakdown. I'm in breakdown. The world is in breakdown. And I get up one morning and I walk into my bathroom and I'm standing there in front of the sink in my underwear. And I'm brushing my teeth and just sort of on autopilot, not really thinking about anything. And I catch my reflection in the mirror. And I know every woman in particular will relate to this moment. And I know every dude does too. But I see myself and I think, God, you look like hell.
Yes, I think everyone can relate to that.
And then I start picking myself apart because a negative thought is a lot like lint. Once it gathers more and more and more. And so I literally start going, your boobs one size bigger than the other, your gray hair's coming in, your lines on your neck, the bags on your, and then of course I'm like, oh my gosh, I got up late and I've got a Zoom call in 8 minutes and I haven't even walked the dog yet. And I just felt beaten down. And I was doing it to myself. I mean, my thoughts were just like killing me. And I had nothing to say. And I don't know what the hell came over me. I mean, it is the cheesiest thing in the world. But there I am in my underwear without a bra on or even a cup of coffee. And I find myself like raising my hand and high-fiving myself in the mirror. And that very first high five, it's not like it changed my life.
Right.
But what happened is something flipped in me. I went from this nasty, negative, just damaging self-talk to silence and to feeling like, okay, I know it's hard. I got this. Come on, get back out there. And my shoulders went back and I went off on my day. And here's when I knew something was up, because the next morning I woke up and I got out of bed, and I always make my bed right after I get up. And I immediately thought about seeing myself in the mirror. Now, I have probably for the last 45 years either criticized myself or ignored myself in the mirror. I have never looked forward to seeing myself in the mirror. It's sort of like that feeling, like if you're going to go meet a friend for a cup of coffee and you're walking up to the cafe and you've got this feeling of excitement that you're about to see somebody that you like. Mm-hmm. That's how I felt. And so I walk into the bathroom and there's my reflection. And so I had this moment with myself on the second morning mm-hmm. where I'm standing there with myself. I'm not criticizing myself. I'm just being with myself. And then I start thinking about the day ahead and how I want to show up. And I raise my hand again. Now, here's the crazy thing when you try it, because I'm on a mission to make everybody on the planet try this thing.
You have a challenge actually going on.
Yes,
today, don't you?
It's called the High Five Challenge. We're getting 5 million people to wake up 5 mornings in a row and start their day with a high five in the mirror, setting an intention, journaling on it, using this simple practice to change the neural pathways in your mind and reset the default programming you have about yourself. It's powerful stuff. Yeah. So here's what's crazy about it. So first of all, when you stand there and you do it, so here's how you do it. You walk into the bathroom, pair it with brushing your teeth, because hopefully everybody's doing that in the morning.
Well, let's hope.
Yes.
Right?
And we're going to habit stack.
Yeah.
So you're going to either do it before the brushing of the teeth or after the brushing of the teeth. And you're going to just take a moment and you're going to be with yourself. That's it. You're just going to look at yourself in the eyes in the mirror. I want you to think about the day ahead. I want you to think about what game you're playing in life. And that's it. Who are you going to be today? How do you want to show up? And then you're going to raise your hand and you're going to high five yourself. Now, here's the first thing you're going to notice. First of all, you're going to notice whether or not you quickly do it and are like, why haven't I been doing this before? Or you're going to notice that you're super resistant to it. And this is what most people feel.
That's what I mean, I tried it because, I've been reading your book and I felt weird and strange.
Yeah. Well, here's why. You've never been taught to celebrate yourself. If you're a woman, you've been told that you're a bitch or you're selfish or you are conceited if you do it. To be a good girl, a good friend, a good wife, a good this, a good partner, you're supposed to support everybody else.
Yeah.
You have been actually taught to withhold it from yourself, to give it to yourself last. And so, yeah, it is uncomfortable for most of us. There's an even sadder reason why. And the sadder reason why is you have a story about your past that you're not worthy of it. You have evidence in your mind that you are a piece of shit, or that you are worthless, or that you're a bad person, or that you're unlovable. You look at all the things that you think that you've done wrong, and you think it makes you unworthy of that kind of support and celebration. That's why you look outside yourself for it, for validation in relationships, from likes, from the amount of money you have, the kind of car that you drive. You have to start to figure out how to build the self-worth and the self-love and the self-validation within yourself. The other reason why it is very difficult for people to do this is because you have been trained to believe that if you're not achieving or doing something worthy of celebration, you don't deserve it. And I'm here to say bullshit. If you wake up in the morning and you can stand in front of that mirror and you're still breathing, you deserve and need encouragement and support. You have survived so much stuff, and here you are still standing up, trying a little harder. Are you kidding me?
What's interesting is also, like, and you it talks about this a bit in your book, the amount of evidence for it, right? So talk about what is it called neurobics?
Yeah, isn't that a weird word?
Yes,
I didn't make that up.
I was
it's
thinking
really weird.
aerobics, neurobics, and about how it's true when you do that with children. There's a whole thing about like how children respond to high-fiving.
Well, first of all, think about what's going viral right now. We're taping this at the beginning of the school year, at least here in the United States. You see all these teachers holding up mirrors, I'm this, affirmations.
That's true.
You see all these teachers high-fiving individual handshakes.
Yep.
Why do we love that?
It's so true. Because it makes people feel good and positive.
And it makes you realize each one of those kids feels seen.
Mm-hmm. That's why they had the mirror so they can see themselves.
Correct.
I saw that. That was such a great piece.
Yeah. And so here's the other thing I want to say. It is actually, it'll feel weird, but you won't think this is weird.
Right.
And here's why. So you've spent your entire life high-fiving other people.
Right.
When you give or receive a high five, what does that physical gesture communicate to somebody?
That they achieved, that they did well, that that they are good, they're great, they're whatever it is, like all the positive.
I believe in you. Let's go.
Yeah.
We got this. I got your back. I celebrate you.
Support.
Keep going.
It's
yes,
support.
And love and so like all of it.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that for everybody else your whole life, and you've done it with this motion. So it's already programmed in your subconscious mind with this motion. So when you go and stand in front of the mirror and your default is to criticize yourself, the second you raise your hand for a high five, the subconscious part of your brain takes over and it marries that programming. I believe in you. I love you. I celebrate you. You got this with your own reflection. It changes how you see yourself.
And I love how that, again, about the kids thing, because I have kids.
Yeah.
You have kids.
First day of school was yesterday.
Right.
So, yeah.
For mine was a couple weeks ago. But the fact is, like, I like to use that now. I do that with my kids all the time. But now I'm going to be much more conscientious of doing it even more.
Yeah.
Versus just good job. Because
so let me explain the study.
Yeah.
So they did this study where, because of course what happened is I started doing this in my own life. I'm feeling crazy benefits. I post one photo on my story. Within an hour or two, 100 or so people have tagged me and they're doing it. And I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. That's when I dig into the research. That's when I go, whether this is a thing or not a thing, I want to understand why this is working for me, because you can't raise your hand and think I suck.
Right.
Because your brain won't allow it because of the programming associated with the physical movement.
So that's the neurobics part of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the second piece is with this study, they took kids and they wanted to know what's the best way to motivate kids through a very challenging problem, or like that they have to work through. And so the first group of kids get the classic fixed mindset verbal praise. Hey, you're really smart. You're really talented. You're really good looking, like a fixed trait. That's not very motivating. We know that for decades of research. The second group get verbal praise in the form of a growth mindset, which we know is more motivating than traits. You're praising the effort. You talk about it all the time on the show. Praising, oh, great job, keep going, love your perseverance, really hard work. You're praising something the kids can control, which is how much effort they put in, more motivating than just saying you're smart. The third group gets a simple high five from the researcher. No words at all. Just walk up, high five, walk away. That group outperforms the other ones. I don't even know if it was 10-fold, 20-fold, it doesn't even matter. It was so profound that the researchers, when they published the study in an academic journal, called it the motivating power of a high five. Why? The reason why a simple high five is way more powerful than any kind of verbal praise or mantra that you could have is because a high five fulfills your most foundational emotional needs. When you receive a high five, you feel seen. And I'm going to tell you something about it. Like, if you ever get a crappy high five where you like kind of miss the hand, what do? You've got to do it again.
You got to do it again.
Because it creates, you have to be intentional about it. There's an intention behind it. So you do feel seen when you get one. You also feel heard. If you get a high five from somebody when you're going through a challenging time and they high five you to try to lift your spirit up, you feel like somebody gets that you're down. The kids knew, these researchers knew that this was hard.
You feel understood.
Yes. And then you feel celebrated for the unique you that you are. And I'm here to tell you, you can build that relationship with yourself. Those researchers were sharing in the struggle with those kids and were cheering them on. And I'm telling you, practicing the high five habit and the tools in this book, you can absolutely build that partnership with yourself.
So the high five is for personal self-assuredness or confidence. The hand to the heart is more for anxiety.
Yeah,
right?
it's for basically calming down your nervous system.
Right.
Exactly.
And then, so how about with the negative thoughts and all that? What is there like, can you use the high five for the negative or the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Correct. So that's a way to flip yourself from a negative mindset to a high five attitude.
Okay. So it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for that.
Yeah. And I'm not thinking about that.
And I'm not thinking about that. And that you said works too, because it's changing all that.
Absolutely.
Then how about the mantras? I wanted to ask you about this because people always talk about have a mantra, whatever that you say. For me, it never seems to do a damn thing. And I think a lot of people would agree. But you talk about basically creating like a meaningful mantra that actually works. Right. So how do you do that? What's the difference? Oh,
there's a big difference. So kind of if you hate your body, I have a daughter that really struggles with how she looks right now.
How old is she?
22.
22.
She's the one with the text in the book who sent me the text seriously while I was writing the book that said, why am I always the ugliest one at the bar?
I saw that text. It was very, very hard to read. It broke my heart when I saw that.
Yeah.
As a mom, especially, it's tough to see that.
And the whole point, and I have her permission to talk about it. And I had her permission to write about it. The text shows that when you get something like that from somebody that you love, it's interesting because that text reveals how she sees the world, not how we see her in the world.
Right.
And it's really important to understand that your experience in life is 1000% determined by what filter you're viewing the world through. And yes, you may have all kinds of evidence that you're overweight right now, or you've let your health go, or that you've done some things that you regret. But how does beating yourself up over it help you change those things? It doesn't.
Right.
In fact, based on the research, we know that being hard on yourself makes it even less likely you're going to change. It's very demotivating. That the most empowering force on the planet is feeling supported and encouraged. And most people who are in a place where they have something that they don't like about their life or their bank account or their pant size or themselves, they spend all day harping on themselves about it instead of flipping it into encouraging and focusing on what they want. So in terms of meaningful mantras, there is no way in hell my daughter, in where she is in her life, is going to stand in front of a mirror and go, I love my body. Should she? Of course she should. Is she the ugliest person in the bar? Are you kidding me? I've tried everything. I follow the experts in this area. I don't ever talk about her body. I talk about her personality, her loyalty, what an incredible friend and daughter and human, her sense of humor, her work, like all of it. She is so focused on how miserable she feels about it that her brain in real time filters the world in a way to go, oh, see, that person's skinnier than me. Boom, more evidence. Completely ignoring that all the other people that she'd actually not be bigger than. Your brain will literally reorganize itself in real time in order to confirm what you believe and what you keep telling yourself. And so back to the mantras, if you don't believe it, your mind rejects it. Seriously. And so you have to start with something that I call meaningful. I probably should have called it pathetic mantras in order to make it stick, because it's not something like, let's say that you think you're a bad person. Okay. You got cheating in your past, or maybe you were abused. You've got childhood trauma. You got all kinds of evidence from your past that makes you stand in front of the mirror and see somebody that does not deserve a high five because you're a damaged person that screws everything up. Okay. What happens when you start to tell yourself that? Maybe somebody told you that when you were growing up. You've thought it so often, you now think it all the time. Just because you've thought it for a long time doesn't mean it has to stay as the default in your mind. That's the other thing that people don't realize, is that at any moment in time, you can get intentional about resetting the default shit that you think in your mind. Just because you're used to it doesn't mean you have to keep thinking it. So if you get in front of that mirror, let me just keep going with this story. So if you have this opinion that you're damaged goods and everything that you do screws up and you're a bad person, let's take a really innocuous example. Let's say that you...
Or not good enough. I think it's more about being not good enough.
Oh, I think people's stories, I think that's the thing people say in public. I think that's a nice way to say, I think I'm a piece of shit. I think I'm worthless. I think I'm not good enough sounds okay in polite conversation.
You don't think that social media, though, has played such a screw up in people's minds because they're comparing constantly to other people?
Yeah, but look, social media is a tool.
Exactly.
Too many people have allowed themselves to become the tool. And if you have an issue or a problem with comparison, stop being an asshole about social media to yourself. Go through your feed and get rid of every single account that triggers you. And fill your account with things that actually make you feel good about yourself, that are about where you're going instead of where you're not and where you're lacking. By doing that and curating your own feed to make you feel like shit, you are tripling down on the programming in your brain and making your brain believe, oh, it's important that I feel bad. It's important I see people skinnier than me. It's important that I see people that have more money than me. It's important that I see all these fake relationships online. It's important that I sit here in bed and before I even set my intention or do my morning routine, I spend 30 minutes self-loathing as I look at people's vacations and I make myself wrong about where I'm not. What the fuck are you doing? Seriously. Get rid of those accounts on your feed. If you're unhappy, do something about it. And the fastest way to use social media for good is delete all the crap that makes you feel like horrible about yourself and start putting in things that reinforce the message that you are in control of your life. You can change your life. You can achieve your goals. You can be a happier person. You can heal your trauma. Absolutely. That is 1,000% in your control. You shouldn't be a robot about it. And so, but nobody does. We all just kind of mindlessly consume it because that's how it's designed. But it can be an incredibly powerful tool for good if you're intentional about how you use it.
The curation is actually a very good idea, but people don't take that extra step to do that.
You have to, unfollow Friday. Unfollow Friday. Every Friday, go through your feed and unfollow people.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And if you're like, oh, but my Uncle Joe is going to get annoyed if I'm mute him. Who gives a shit what your Uncle Joe thinks? Honest to God, like your social media is for you. Stop thinking about what you're broadcasting on social media and start thinking about what you're allowing into your mind.
That's a great one.
Look at the last 5 people you texted. Are those people helping you get where you want to go?
Are you asking me or just?
I'm just saying, there's a test you can do. Look at
Yeah.
the last 5 people you texted. Look at the last 5 accounts you liked. Oh, Kim Kardashian, thanks a lot. Like, she's an amazing businesswoman. Amazing businesswoman. Is she actually helping you get where you want to go?
Absolutely. I don't follow her, but I would imagine not. Yes.
Well, I don't know. For some people, maybe. For some people, not. Like, get serious about your life. Like, at some point, you're going to die. At some point, this whole thing's over. And you're mindlessly walking through this and setting up your whole life to make you feel like shit. And you don't have to. That's the reason, by the way, why you can't stand in front of a mirror and high five yourself, because your whole life has been organized around making you feel bad about yourself. And I'm here to tell you, you can turn this around. You can change your social media feeds. That's number 1. Number 2, you can force yourself to try this stupid thing. Try it for 5 days. Do the high five challenge. Just go to highfivechallenge.com. You can sign up for free. It's super easy. High five yourself in the mirror for 5 days in a row and see what happens. We have a woman who had body dysmorphia for 20 years write to us and say she hasn't looked at herself in 20 years. 5 days of doing this, she can now look at herself and grin because she doesn't see her body anymore. She sees the human being inside.
Wow.
Yeah, we have a woman that wrote to us in a domestic violence shelter saying that, you know, she had just escaped this abusive relationship. She's lost everything. She has so much trauma. But this high five thing has made her realize she still has herself.
Wow.
She can have her own back. And it begins every single morning rebuilding that partnership with yourself. You know, there's only one person that you spend your whole life with.
That's right.
And it's high time you start working on improving the relationship that you have with yourself, because it is the foundation of every relationship that you have. If you feel like shit about yourself, you will allow people into your life who treat you like shit. If you start to empower, encourage, and support yourself, you will build up your self-esteem and worthiness so that you are strong enough to attract and be around the people that you deserve and that deserve you. And I'm not saying that anybody deserves abuse. That's not what I'm saying at all. So do not take that out of context. I'm not saying to you, but
Right.
what I'm saying is you're not responsible for any of the bad shit that's happened to you. You survived it. You are responsible for what happens next. And that's where building a relationship with yourself matters. People don't have boundaries because they can't even look themselves in the eye. So how the fuck are you going to look somebody else in the eye?
That's really good advice. And that's, again, very tangible stuff.
Did you write the high five habit from your own experience? Yes, I did. I discovered the high five habit in April of 2020 when it felt like life was punching me in the face and there was a lot that I needed to change and a lot I needed to face. And I felt overwhelmed and unmotivated and discouraged and defeated. I don't know if anybody else has experiences like that in life, but that's how I felt, like just overwhelmed by the demands of my life and completely defeated by the thought of what it was going to take to face the issues that I had to face. And the high five habit happened, I think, by divine intervention. One morning I saw myself and I just looked so defeated and exhausted. I didn't know what to say to myself. And instinctually, I just gave the woman I saw in the mirror a high five because she looked like she needed it. And from the very first high five, I felt an energy shift every time I did it. And I practiced the high five for about a month. And I kept noticing that I was looking forward to it. I kept noticing that I felt more focused and more encouraged and resilient every time I would high five, myself, the person in the mirror. I noticed that my energy was more positive when I left the bathroom after doing it. And I posted a photo of me doing it one morning. It is a photo that's right on page. It's a photo that I put right in chapter 2. There's the very first high five that I posted online. There's no instructions to anybody. And within an hour, people around the world started posting photos of themselves high-fiving. That's how this whole thing started in April of 2020. I guess that would have been May of 2020 when I posted it. And that's when I realized I'm not the only one who needs to learn how to encourage themselves. I'm not the only one who needs this kind of self-worth and self-support and self-celebration. And I took on a year-long research project, and the result is the High Five Habit and the High Five Challenge. And literally hundreds of thousands of people's lives changed and transformed using science and the simple habits I write about in this book that teach you how to stop hating yourself, how to stop beating yourself up, how to stop focusing on what's going wrong, and how to tap into the positive, resilient, celebratory programming inside of you and use it to turn your life around, take control, and to propel yourself forward and ride the ups and downs of life. That's what the High Five Habit's about. It's bringing all of that self-worth, self-respect, self-validation, self-love, self-acceptance, all of it back inside yourself. Super cool. Here's a question from Savitello. How do I begin to retrain my brain? First of all, you got to get a copy of the High Five Habit because that's what the whole thing's about. It's about using programming inside your mind, body, and spirit to break apart the habits that run right here on repeat, break self-rejection, break self-hatred, break self-judgment, break the self-criticism, and program in new behaviors and thinking habits and tricks that you can use to make self-confidence, self-support, self-love, self-acceptance, self-forgiveness your default, because you need those things in order to be your best every single day. Another one, how do I start loving myself? Well, you're not going to start loving yourself by telling yourself you love yourself, because you have demonstrated through your actions that you disrespect yourself, that you reject yourself, that you ignore yourself, that you criticize yourself. So one of the reasons why the High Five Habit is so profoundly effective is because we're not telling you to speak differently to yourself. I'm using physical actions, the high five, that are programmed into your brain with tremendously positive association. You've never high-fived somebody and actually thought, I hate you, you suck, you're going to lose. You've never done it. So it is neurologically impossible to think something negative about yourself while you're high-fiving your reflection in the mirror. The physical movement of a high five triggers the positive programming in your brain to kick in. Because forever, whether you've been watching people high-fiving one another in sporting matches, or you've been high-fiving other people in your life, or you've received those high fives in your life, your brain knows what a high five is. And your brain doesn't distinguish between you watching teammates high five, you receiving a high five, or you giving yourself one. Every single neuroscientist that I have spoken to, and yesterday I spoke to Dr. Caroline Leaf, who is one of the people who invented neuroplasticity. She discovered it in her research in the 80s, that your brain is capable of changing. She was so blown away by this. She said, I can't believe, since I've been studying neuroscience for 30 years, I've never thought of this. It's brilliant, Mel. Brilliant, because of how it leverages the programming physiologically, neurologically. So you want to learn to love yourself, you need to demonstrate that you love yourself through your actions. And one way you can do that is by adding a high five to your reflection in the mirror every morning as part of your morning routine. You do not say a thing to yourself. Just raise your hand, look yourself in the eyes, and give yourself a high five. And within 5 days, you will start to see magical things happen.
Mel, in your life, did you ever have a chance to meet Dr. Stephen R. Covey?
No.
He would have been riveted listening to you the last couple of minutes. I want to read a passage from your most recent book, The High Five Habit. In essence, you described what the big idea is, but I want to read a passage. It says, it starts with you. If you want more celebration, validation, love, acceptance, and optimism, you must practice giving those things to yourself. For real, it starts with you. If you don't cheer for yourself and your dreams, who else will? if you can't look yourself in the mirror and see someone worth loving, why would anyone else? And speaking of anyone else, when you learn to love yourself and support yourself, it helps every relationship in your life. When you can celebrate yourself, it helps you cheer louder for others, your friends, your colleagues, your family, your neighbors, and your partner. That's because the relationship with yourself is the foundation of every relationship you have in life. Riff on that.
Yeah, this was a huge epiphany for me. And, I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that since you're listening to this or watching this, you, like me, are a high achiever. You have very high standards for yourself. You're looking to improve your life. Well, I want to flag a very big mistake that took me 52 years to uncover and to change in my own life. And it is the single biggest and most profound change that I have ever discovered. And it is this. At a very young age, I started to realize, and I think, we all have this epiphany where we go, oh, holy cow. When I get good grades, my parents like me and they love me. I get a lot of positive attention when I make the football team. I'm really feeling loved when I make the cheerleading squad. Ooh, when I got into that college or had that major or made that money or bought that nice car, people really gave me a lot of positive attention. And we high achievers make a mistake of fusing what we're doing with our worthiness. We start to believe that we are only worthy of celebration, support, and love when we are doing something that is worth celebrating or worth validating or worth cheering for. And if you don't wake up and separate the things that you're doing and striving for and the goals that you have from your inherent self-worth as a human being, you will forever feel this sense that you're not enough. You will forever feel this void, because if your self-worth and your lovability is anchored in achievement, even when you make $1 million, even when you make the New York Times bestseller list, even when you meet the person of your dreams, the second you achieve that thing, you're going to now look for something else, because your worth as a human being depends on what you're doing. The high five habit is all about this radical idea that will change your life. And the idea is this: if you are breathing, you're worthy of celebration. The mere fact that you exist is why you are worthy of being loved and supported and forgiven. And it's why you deserve kindness. It's not because you made it to the gym. It's not because you're making $100,000. It's not because you just got promoted. Should you celebrate those wins? Of course. But those wins are not the reason why you're an extraordinary human being. And, I had this all knotted up. And, I wondered, why did I, every time I achieved my goals, I would still see a woman in the mirror that wasn't enough. I was my own worst critic. And by critic, this is what I mean. I was relentless in focusing on what wasn't working. I was relentless in pointing out to myself all the things I did wrong instead of the 1,000 things I was doing right. Yeah. And that constant grinding beatdown was so just much the default. I wasn't even aware of it until I discovered the power of high-fiving myself in the mirror and silencing that critic. And, I'll tell you an even more personal thing that I bet a bunch of you are going to really relate to. So when I discovered the high five habit, and it was just by dumb luck, I was going through a lot in my life. It was April of 2020. There was a lot going on in my business. This was before the PPP loans had come out. The speaking business was in a free fall. My television show had been canceled. Our kids had come home and they were just exploding with anxiety and grief and anger about college getting canceled. Like it was just like a mess. And I would wake up in the morning and I just felt overwhelmed by my life. And it doesn't even matter what's going on in the backdrop, because I think we've all had that experience where you just feel overwhelmed by your to-do list. You feel overwhelmed by how busy your life is. You feel overwhelmed by the issues that you're facing. Even though there's other amazing things going on, it's like the overwhelm that drags you down. And so I'm standing in the bathroom and I look at myself in the mirror and I immediately begin with the beat down. I'm like, oh God, you look terrible. And the lines on my neck and one boob's hanging lower than the other. And, the circles under my eyes. And then of course, once your mindset goes critical, it rests there. So it went from attacking my physical appearance to, why'd I wake up so late? God, I got 8 minutes to get on a Zoom call. You forgot to text Scott back. Oh, come on, Mel. Like boom, 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 boom. No grace, no kindness, no compassion. That's how I started my day. And in this moment, on a random morning on April 2020, all of a sudden, this is divine intervention. There is no question. I stop for a second and I realize, holy cow, that woman in the mirror looks beaten down and overwhelmed. And for whatever reason, I just raised my hand and I gave her a high five in the mirror. And, look, it's not like lightning struck in that moment. But what happened is my shoulders dropped. I laughed because it seemed so stupid. But I felt this like energy shift. It was sort of like a shift, like, all right, okay, sort of like if a teammate blows a free throw in basketball. When you high five them, it's like, shake it off. Come on, we're going to still win. Get out there. I believe in you. Let's go. It's that kind of energy. And so I felt that. And I kind of had this like, come on, you got a roof over it. You're going to be fine. You're going to figure it out. I know it's a lot, but you're going to figure it out, Mel. And boom, I went on with my day. And the next day, I did it again. And the next day I did it again. And the next day I did it again. And I started to realize I was feeling something. First of all, the critic was shutting up, because here's where the science gets crazy cool. And this isn't just Mel Robbins science. The woman who discovered neuroplasticity 30 years ago, that neuroscientist, went bananas. Her head basically exploded when I started discussing the high five habit. Here's what we know happens when you add a simple high five to your morning routine. Number one, you get a drip of dopamine. And dopamine is critical. The reason why dopamine is critical is because it boosts your mood. When you simply high five yourself, your brain recognizes the high five because the programming's already in here. Your brain knows what to do when the high five is coming. Boop, dopamine. Dopamine's important because it boosts your mood. We know that your mood in the morning impacts productivity all day long. Second thing that it does, as you go to raise your hand, the first time you do it, you're going to be thinking, Mel, Scott, you two have lost me on this. This is so stupid. Like your critic is going to be going, because this part of your brain is going to be engaged. The second you get close to the mirror, something crazy happens. Your mind goes silent. Your mind goes silent because your brain is now triggered by the action. This is called neurobics, an entire field of study about neuropathway activity in physical motion. Your brain goes quiet because your brain recognizes a high five. And so it grabs all the neuroassociation and programming in your subconscious and it marries it with your reflection. A high five has always said, I believe in you. I see you. I love you. You got this. It is celebration. It is belief. It is confidence. It is optimism. It is resilience. It's motivation. A high five, never in the history of high fives has a high five been, have a terrible day. You are the worst. You're going to fail. That's not what a high five means. That's why your critic shuts up, because the high five programming that's already in your brain overrides it. It's incredible. That's the third thing that happens. As you repeat this new action your brain is watching, this isn't a mantra, which doesn't work, by the way. This is a physical habit your brain is witnessing you do. So your brain starts to see you treating yourself with kindness, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, support. Your brain's filter, the reticular activity system, is paying attention. It's changing in real time. Do you realize that after adding a simple high five to my morning routine, it took about 5 days for this to happen, by the way, but I've now done it since April of 2020. Every single morning after I brush my teeth, I stack the habit together. It's now programmed as a habit loop in there. Don't even think about it. The benefits are incredible. When I see myself in the mirror, it wouldn't occur to me to think something negative because I have fundamentally rewired my mind. I see a human being that I'm rooting for. I see the person I high five every morning. It's freaking unbelievable. And the way that it's changed me as a leader, I don't look at what's wrong. I focus on what's working. And when something screws up, like this morning, I put up a big post this morning about depression because my husband is now publicly talking about the long-term depression that he's been struggling with. And we edited the post really intently because it's a serious topic and I have millions of followers and I would never just send somebody casually out on a stage to talk on my behalf. So everything I post, I get last eyes on. And the post that we edited isn't the one that got posted. And the old Mel Robbins, the negative, critical, like kind of something's wrong, stressed out, that Mel Robbins, the pre-high five habit Mel Robbins, my default would have been, oh, everything, like this kind of reaction to it. The new Mel Robbins was like, oh, okay. I wonder if it was a tech glitch. Well, let's fix it. Like, it's unbelievable to have a default that you have intentionally programmed in that's optimistic, encouraging, supportive. It's life-changing. You'll make a lot more money too, because you're not gripping everything so tight. And I want to tell you one more insight, because this is super important. You know, when I first said to my husband, who's also an entrepreneur, I think you should try this high five habit thing. I really think you should add it to your morning routine. And now keep in mind, my husband is the founder of a men's retreat called Soul Degree. He is all about men going in and unbottling the stuff that keeps you feeling like there's a vice on your head or your chest. He is a Buddhist meditation instructor. He's a yoga instructor. He is on the board of advisors of NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership Institute. He's an incredible guy. And he's been struggling with depression for 10 years. And he has also, unbeknownst to me, been beating the heck out of himself because he failed in his first business as an entrepreneur in the restaurant business. And I know so many of you are going to relate to this story, so I want to tell it to you. You see, Chris and his best friends went into the restaurant business. And, you know, the stats on the restaurant business are bananas. I think it's like, 4% of restaurants make it beyond 4 years or something like that. And so they made it beyond 4 years. They ended up making it 7 years before they sold it to the folks that own it now. But, you know, their first location was amazing. And we were complete idiots. We cashed out our life savings, our kids' college funds. We threw it all into the business. We leveraged the business with our house and credit cards and factoring. And, you know, what could go wrong? Well, then the housing crisis hit. And we found ourselves $800,000 in debt. Chris hadn't been paid for 6 months. I lost my job. And it was crushing. That was the first hole that I fell in when I hit rock bottom, and I invented the 5-second rule in that moment to help me get out of bed when the anxiety was so bad that I literally would lay there like a human pot roast marinating in fear over all of our problems. And what's interesting is that as Chris and I have clawed our way out of debt, as we have rewritten our lives and launched new chapters, I've always looked at that period and that business failing as a gift. I've always, and Chris's business partner too, was like, kind of could shrug his shoulders and be like, hey, entrepreneurship, failure is part of the package here. Doesn't mean you're a failure. And actually, as business partners, like, I'm really proud of what we built. I'm proud of how we were operators. I'm proud of the culture we built. And yeah, like, it didn't return the investment that we thought it would. And I'm also grateful for it, Scott, because without it, I never would have been in such a crisis that I needed the 5-second rule. So it's like a gift. It wasn't until I asked Chris to add this high five to the mirror, and his reaction was this: I think I'll pass. That sounds stupid. And I'm like, excuse me? Okay, but I'm on to something here. Would you just do it for me? Because I need your support. Would you just try it for 5 days, for crying out loud? And so Chris tried the high five in the mirror. You don't say anything. You just raise your hand, high five yourself. That's it. Send yourself into the day with all of that documented benefit, like you are your own best teammate, into the game of life and business, knowing you have your own back, knowing that no matter what happens, you're going to go for it, that you're going to pick yourself up. You're going to face it. You got this. After 5 days, this is what he said to me. He said, Mel, the reason why I thought the high five was stupid is because I look in the mirror and I see somebody that failed. I see somebody that didn't provide for his family. I see somebody that's a bad husband, a bad father because of that. And you only high five somebody that you believe in and you like. And I think I'm a failure. So why on earth would I high five myself? And I think that in him seeing that, it's illustrative of what's actually holding people back. It's the fact that when you look in the mirror, you are still judging yourself for the mistakes of the past. You are withholding the very support, the very forgiveness, the compassion that you need in order to heal, in order to write a new chapter, in order to be productive, in order to change your habits. You've been outsourcing that appreciation to everybody else, that compassion to everybody else, when really you got to bring it in-house. I had no idea, Scott, that the man standing next to me at the bathroom sink every morning for the last 10 years has been beating himself up over a business that failed. And I looked at the exact same thing and thought it was an extraordinary gift. I didn't believe any of those things about Chris. I thought he was an incredible husband, an incredible father. I thought he was an amazing entrepreneur who, through failing and trying, stumbled into his true calling, which is this men's retreat soul degree. And it was really scary to learn just how dark it had gotten for him. And what I'm happy to say is that through therapy and through talking about it and through not bottling it up and through high five and through exercise and through acts of self-compassion, self-kindness, self-appreciation, the fog is lifting. I see the light coming back on. I see my happy husband coming back. And so, it has been a deeply, deeply personal and powerful and transformational experience to not only confront just how awful I've been to myself by just constantly focusing on what's wrong or constantly beating myself up, or you could have done this better, you should have said this, or if only you'd sent this text. And the relief and peace that you feel when you are able to look yourself in the mirror, and even though you may have flubbed the presentation, or you didn't meet your quota this year in the sales, or you raised your voice at your kids, or you drank a little too much, or whatever it is that normally you'd beat yourself up at. If you can have more compassion and kindness with yourself, research shows that of all the behavior change that you could engage in, all of it, exercise, diet, meditation, all behavior change, the number one behavior change that has the greatest impact on your fulfillment and your happiness is making it a habit to be kind to yourself. And so that's what the high five habit is all about. It begins with a high five in the mirror, but there's so much science in this, so much research in this about habits that train your mind and train your brain, train your body to take the resting default from self-criticism and stress and anxiety and negativity to a resting default of calm, centered, confident, encouraging, and compassionate. And when you can start each day feeling grounded in your body and looking yourself in the mirror and seeing a person that you're rooting for, that you like, that you support, you will take that foundational energy and strength back out into the world, and it will transform your family. It will transform your teammates. It will transform your company. You getting right with you changes everything. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.